Hey folks, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. Today's a very exciting day. What we have in front of us here, brand new from Zoukei Mura, is their Ho229B. This is the night fighter version of the Flying Wing. It's not just the night fighter version of the Flying Wing, but Ben, hang on a second here. There are two versions of this aircraft in here. You have the single-seat day fighter version of the airplane that you can build in here, and you also have the new two-seat night fighter version of the fighter. It's all in this box. So one version or the other, right? You can build the daytime version, single seat, or the nighttime version, double seat and tandem. So here's the deal. Zoukei Mura reached out to me and said, Ben, would you like to have a free sample of this kit for you to review and keep? I said, yes, I absolutely would. They had one caveat, and this is important because all of you know that I am a Zoukei Mura fanboy at this point. I am hugely supportive of this company and the quality of their kits. They said you can't release anything or share any information about it until June 20th on social media. And I said, no problem. So that's why you're seeing this today. So they sent this out to me ahead of time. I took it, opened it up. I didn't take it apart, right? It's already disassembled. And took a look at everything on the inside. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open the box up. We're going to take a look at the instruction manual briefly. I'm going to flip through it. We're going to look at a select handful of the sprues because showing every single one's boring and not necessary. They're available online. But we will look at some of the finer details and give you a sense of how big the kit is and what you're getting involved with. And then at the end of the video, I'll give you my final thoughts. I do want to get one more thing out of the way, though. One of the critiques of Zoukei Mura that I hear a lot is, well, you'll never see that detail. You know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of internal structures that gets covered up. My other kits that I'm building of Zoukei Mura are going to be cutaways. You don't have to do that with this one. They've molded the external fuselage pieces in clear plastic. You can see through them. So there's no more excuses to say, well, you'll never see that detail. If you don't see them, that's because you chose to paint over the fuselage, right? It leaves you a lot of options for building a really unique kit. So I'm super excited about it. Let's go ahead and get this box open. We'll go through kind of the things, and I'll give you my thoughts at the end. All right, this is probably the most interesting stuff if you get a good idea of the amazing kind of detail that's going to be involved in putting this kit together. Here's your number 4 Jumo engines, some of the detail in the side, and then of course words in Japanese that I can't read yet. Side of the box, pretty simple, just identifying the kit and the model. Alright, the other long side of the box shows you the two different versions, plus a QR code to scan for the artwork. I don't think that worked when I tried to do this, but again, I received this box early, so all those systems may not be in place yet. So that's the box. Obviously, let's go ahead and bust it open. Oh, real quick, before we open it up, I did want to point out that this box is larger than your standard Zoukei Mura product box. This is our Focke-Wulf 190A kit, and as you can see, it is smaller. The P51, the 109 in this thing, all fit in this size box. They all match up on the shelf. And as you can see here, this is quite a bit larger. So when I put this stuff in my kit stash, I was like, oh, this box is going to stick out. So I just want to point out that fun fact. Now let's go ahead and open it up. So first order of business, I know this sounds silly, but if you do one of these dealies, I actually had trouble getting it open at first. Make sure you're just grabbing the top of the lid and pull it off, because you're met with another box lid. It actually opens up here from the front, which is a departure from the normal kits. So flip this up, and this is what you're met with. A sea of clear plastic parts, divided up evenly into two sections. This larger section over here is where you'll find your paperwork. So if you pull everything out, and yes, eventually down inside you'll get to your typical gray colored sprues. Down here we have this stuff, our magical instruction book, along with our decals, masks, and then a little magazine, advertising the different types of parts that you have in here. So, what do we want to look at first here? Let's address the manual quickly here. I'm not going to go into great detail because a lot of this is on the website, but let's take a look at what's going on here. All right, typical with the Super Wing series, we've got a really cool customized front cover looking manual with some stamps on it that say Super Wing, a distinctive color. I really like this touch. These are, in my opinion, the new standard for manuals, rivaled only by Wingnut Wings, and in discussion with some colleagues about that, I actually prefer these. The Wingnut Wings are better coffee table material because they're gloss. These have a matte finish, which means you can easily take a pencil and write and mark on it, which is actually better for the model builder and more practical. So again, in the beginning, you get some dialogue, some information about your B2 engines, the Mark 103 and 108 cannons that were involved. When you flip it open, here we'll get an overview of your options. You're going to have a couple of different paint schemes for your night fighters, and then you have the single seat day fighter option to build. So there's two kits here in terms of choices. So they're calling it the Ho229 version 3, the day fighter, and then the B model, which would be nighttime. So you have to decide which one you're going to build. At the bottom down here, this is where they go ahead and break down. This is your instruction summary here. You're going to start off with the engines. We're going to go ahead and do the fuselage, the cockpit, landing gear. Then you could go ahead and get the bulk of the aircraft together, and then we'll move on to the wings. Again, if you're doing the single-seat day fighter or the two-seat night fighter version. And that's what you get to decide. And then in the back it talks about paint, decals, and your parts list. I really like that they do this. All right, on the first page, moving in here, it's page 6, right? You have your color callouts, tools, and again, typical of Zoukei Mura, this is what you're going to build. This is what it should look like painted if you use their colors. And you can go ahead and begin the assembly process. I do want to say that there are comments here. I'm just going to move through. I have had folks tell me that they feel like the instruction manuals are very complicated. And that's true. You do need to take your time and pay attention to what's going on. I don't think that they're necessarily complicated, though. They just add a lot of detail. And here's an example of that. You have all of these little red markings on here. These are pieces that are to be removed. It tells you to cut it. It may look like a lot, but again, this is easy to write on with a pencil. You can mark it up and keep track of your progress as you move along. This does look like a complicated aircraft, right? You end up with all this cool stuff going on with the internal framing. But yeah, it's going to go together, I suspect, very well. I also like that Zoukei Mura does this. So you end up in situations where, yeah, there's a lot going on, right? You have all these pieces, but they've colored the parts that you're working on right here. If I move up here, I'm seeing that they're calling out one part, D10, and they're telling you where to cut it. And then they explode a view, it gets installed right here. Again, D10, this is where it ends up after being installed. Next to it, D10 and D8. So in this whole part here, we're talking about, this whole section of instructions, we're talking about 2 parts. Then we move down and we have our third part, D4. A lot of information to make sure that you get these simple parts in the right spot. And that's how you end up producing a model that has complicated pieces, but you don't get lost in the quagmire of information that's here. So I think that that's really awesome on Zoukei Mura's part for clarifying all this. So you'll move along here, get the engines installed, and then you end up with configurations of pieces look like this. I mean, this is starting to look like an F1 car, right? I mean, or we've got ourselves like a pod racer from Star Wars. The Germans were way ahead of their time with the design of these things, right? All right, so the assembly process will continue thus forth. And then you'll end up here with your cockpit. Again, options here. Are you going to do the 2-seat night fighter version, or are you going to do the single-seat day fighter? You have to commit to one or the other. And as you see up here in the corner, there's a B or a version 3, right? Version 3 is the daytime, B is your night fighter. So make sure you keep track of that as you progress through. All right, I'm going to start skipping some pages here. You guys get the idea of what's going on. Get your landing gear assembly. This will show you, again, all kinds of information. This is the angle, the profile views, what it should look like when you're done to make sure everything's lined up correctly. Here we even have, I don't know if you can see this, they give you reference lines in red. So that if you really want to get angle, assemble approximately 20-degree angle here from straight up and down. I mean, just if you want to get your protractor out, the option is there. All right, here we're going to start to assemble the fuselage tops. This is a pre-production piece, I believe, per the information here. And then this is the Night Fighter 2-seat version. Then here's your clear parts for the single-seat Day Fighter. And you can see through what's going on inside. It's a little bit hazy. I think they did that on purpose for painting, if I mentioned it earlier. But yeah, I mean, this is really cool, right? I mean, stuff's starting to happen here in terms of you're ending up with a really interesting looking model kit. All right, in the back here, here's you're starting to get in your painting decal options. This, well, sorry, correction. This is where you're getting into which type of configuration for assembling the wings. These are the finished models, right? But we got to put the wings on next. In typical Zoukei Mura style, you have all the internals plus your fuel tanks. It is interesting to me that these have fuel tanks and that they didn't actually just make the wing. Well, I guess that was standard in World War II. In this day and age, large aircraft like airliners, the wing is the tank, right? They just seal off areas of it. These have actual tanks on the inside. This is the stuff you learn, right? So, continuing on, here's your 2-seat version. You're just breaking it down by which one are you working on. Again, big giant green version 3, so that you know you're working on the right one over here. Just take your time and mark out what you need to in the manual as you go along so that you pick the correct one. That way you don't get lost, accidentally assemble the wrong parts. Fantastic stuff. And then in the back, of course, we have our parts call out that we're going to go ahead and look at. So that takes care of the manual. Super awesome. Let's look at the decals real quick. All right, here's our decal sheet, and as mentioned before, these are the masks for the canopies, which is really nice. So what you have here at the bottom is Ho229. This would be your single fighter daytime version. And then here is the second sheet, and at the bottom you see we have the 229B for the night version. What I like, so we have your usual individual instruments as individual decals, or the entire panel right here, gloriously done. So you can apply it in whatever version you think is best. This is the Night Fighter. I'm assuming your scopes, things like that in the back. Read the instructions carefully. I see a lot of dots down here. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this stuff carries over to both versions. We're not sure. And then I'm looking here, I'm wondering if this decal, these are interesting shapes. I wouldn't be surprised if these go on your canopy, thus simplifying the painting of the canopy. You don't have to, that's interesting. We'll have to look at that in instructions. That's really neat if they did that. If we go back to the daytime version, there's the cockpit, the instrument panel, and then this is nice. Like you know, depending on your skill level, you can mask this stuff off and paint it, which is great. If you don't feel like it, here it is already, the decals done for you. I think that's a really nice feature. But I mean, look at my finger. These are really big, so masking this wouldn't be terrible, right? Down here, what I was talking about, you only have one kind of like caution, watch where you walk outline, versus there's a lot of it on this sheet, so I suspect you'll go back and forth because a lot of this has got to be universal. All right, let's start looking at the parts. All right, starting off here, we're going to take a look at two examples of the clear parts. I don't want to pull out every single part sprue because we're going to be here all day long. So this is the main top of the fuselage, and here's my hand, right? So you can do a guesstimate of about how big it is. The detail is fantastic. The molding is exquisite, and it has kind of this matte finish to it. Now, you can see my fingers through there. I'm not totally why they opted to go with this. I'm thinking that to do crystal clear parts, you have to get this perfectly smooth, like glass smooth, right? And that machining process could be horrendously difficult. Although we have, look at this, the light is molded on. Can we see that? There you go. The light's molded on top of the cockpit here. It's probably navigation light. So you'd have to mask that off. Yeah, this is really nice. And then when we move on to our glass pieces, I mean, there's no, right? You can see right through them. I mean, this is as good as it gets, folks. Other than glass, even glass would be difficult to do. So I did do a little experiment later. I'll show you. I do want to point out here, this is also your glass instrument panel. This is one of the options if you want to put your decals on the back and paint this on the front. Again, I like that Zoukei Mura includes like 3 different ways to get the instruments on. All right, pressing on here. Moving on, this is my experiment sprue. I wanted to talk about something. I apologize, Zoukei Mura. The tape is to hold these pieces in because I knocked them loose during my masking process. This is not how yours will come, but I want to show off several things. One, this is the nose of, I believe, the 2-seat night fighter, and look at that. Look at, this is crystal clear, and then you have this amazing shape for the nose of the aircraft with the engine inlets. There's no seam lines inside of here, folks, that you need to fill. That's been handled. All right, so I did an experiment, and hopefully you can see it here. What I wanted to know was, what if you wanted these fogged areas, what if you wanted them to be crystal clear, right? Like the canopies. I suspect that doing this is a serious, very expensive, time-consuming machine process. So what I did was I took these engine covers, and all I did was take Tamiya Clear and spray a clear pass over the top and bottom of this part. Just one time, that's all I did. And the stock kit piece is here on the left. And I think you can see this is already looking clear. It's already more transparent than the one on the left. So my point is, and I only did one coat, I think you probably need to do a couple. I think you can get an almost clear finish on these things if you want to be able to see perfectly through, or is through all these parts better than this fogged up part, you know, almost having a canopy-like experience. So there's an option for everyone who says, like, well, you know, it's a lot of stuff on the inside, but then you can't see it. No, you can see it. Zoukei Mura took care of it here, but I wanted to show that process off, just as an example. All right, pressing on. All right, now we have sprues B and C. I chose these two specifically because I wanted to show off some specific details. First of all, this is where we start to get into the frame. Those parts that I was showing you earlier. And as you can see, there's a lot of little tabs that you'll end up removing, but they're big. This is not like it's going to be difficult to handle. I also wanted to show off, this is your plastic sprue instrument panel, right? I'm going to focus here, and if you flip it around, there's your instrument cluster on the back, which I think is amazing if you want to run wires to this and get it hooked up. Also, look at this canopy frame. I would almost expect this to be 3D printed today. Here's my fingers. This is top-notch stuff right here. And then we've got some actuators. I'm not going to pretend to know what these parts are, but you can see tremendous amounts of detail just already incorporated into the piece. All right, now on the other sprue, so you can see we have more frame, more, this is probably a junction box of some sort if I had to guess. And then we have, let's see, here it is. We have the seat, right? It's a plain Jane seat, and next to it, we have it with the seatbelts molded on. I haven't seen detail like that for seatbelts outside of resin parts, right? That's exceptional stuff. So again, nothing disappointing here from Zoukei Mura. So I thought it would be a good idea to also show you the wings. I believe this is a top and bottom half right here, and then these are the internals along with some of the fuel tanks that are included. This is not a small model when you put it together, right? It is in fact a flying wing. The bulk of the fuselage is about the size of my hand, but then as you can see, double this up, it's going to be pretty big. So that is a display consideration, but the fact that you could just display it with the fuselage, which is how the Horton was found by the Allies initially and then put together, that's obviously an option for you. Again, this is one of those deals where all this internal workings of the wing could be put on display, or at a minimum, you could just enjoy being able to understand how the aircraft worked and how everything was assembled on the inside. And Zoukei Mura is, of course, providing you with top-notch detail. And again, I have never had a fit issue with any of these kits. If anything does not go right, it's usually self-induced. You just have to follow their instructions very, very closely. So, yeah, very, very, very cool stuff to check out. All right, next item here, this is the other cockpit seat, but next to it we have cannons. And I wanted to show these off. These are large. I think they went 30 millimeter on both versions of these. And at this point, right, it's kind of a go big or go home type of thing. 1 or 2 rounds from this would bring down any U.S. bomber during the war, especially the high explosive versions. Here you have some of your cockpit tub sides. I believe we're looking at the 2-seat version here with the rails. And then again, this sprue has lots of neat little parts on it. I do want to move along to the engine and talk about that. All right, here we're looking at sprue A, and you can see we have quite a few turbines, including the housing right here. In the instructions, they put a lot of the turbine blades together, but what it doesn't include, because I don't think you can see it, is the hot section. The hot section is kind of like a series of, think of it as like 2-liter bottles strapped together in a circle. That's where the combustion takes place, and they opted not to model that. This isn't something that is terribly complicated. It looks neat, but it gives you a great understanding of how, generally speaking, a turbojet engine worked. It's the foundation of all modern engines today. And I thought that that was really cool that they included all of this. Okay, here is sprue D. I think this is the last one we're going to take a look at. Again, we have a lot of our linkage parts and actuators, some landing gear, I believe. I'm not sure what those components are. But again, here are these are the Mark 108 cannons, I believe. Again, 30 millimeter, very large barrels on them. Longer barrels, so we're going to be shooting farther with these types of things. But yeah, they're big. These are big cannons. I'm not going to call it a gun. This will ruin your day. But it was a really cool feature on this airplane. And then I do want to point out up here, this I believe is part of the landing gear actuator assembly, or just part of the guts on the inside. I'm not sure. It's a complicated part that looks cool. You got a few things to take apart, spray paint it up, and we'll install it, and it's going to look really awesome. So yeah. Oh, and there's a lever here. I don't know to what. I get excited when I see these little details like that. just all kinds of little Easter eggs everywhere. Again, exquisitely molded. There's nothing wrong with any of these parts. No flashing. If any, it's going to be very, very little. I'm not seeing any ejection pin marks yet. Yeah, super cool. All right, so let's go ahead and move on with my final thoughts here. All right, so that's the kit, right? That's the gist of this kit. What do I think? There's a lot to unpack here in your mind. What I'm seeing now that this is my, I think the fourth one, third kit from them, fourth kit, there's improvements. It's hard to improve on things that are already really good, but they've done it. I think a big part of that here was molding the fuselage parts in clear plastic so that you could see through the inside. You saw earlier that I showed you, like, well, hey, wait a minute. What if I want to make the foggy part clear? How can you do that? And obviously you can polish the plastic, but you'll have to do the inside and outside. And I just did a quick, clear coat with Tamiya clear, and don't use flat, use clear. They're glossy clear to try and, what you're doing is you're smoothing out the little microscopic bumps in the plastic so you can see through it. I would have liked if the entire thing was as transparent as the glass canopies, but my suspicion is getting a crystal clear glass canopy in glass, which this kit has achieved, right? There's no debating that. I suspect is extremely time consuming and expensive. You have to get the metal mold perfectly smooth, like glass, right? It's got to have, or a mirror finish. And I suspect that that's very expensive and time consuming, and that's why they went this way. You can still see through, like, the light fog version. You'll be able to see the inside of the aircraft. But there's options there. I think this is a huge deal that they went with the see-through body. I like that they broke it up right into, you have the fuselage and the two wings. So the original flying wing was found, I believe, with just like the fuselage middle. So you could display that easily. It's about the size of a car, right? Or a 1/35th scale tank. You could put that on your shelf just about anywhere. You're going to need a little bit more real estate if you're going to put the wings on. You're probably looking at a little bit wider than the box here, so a little bit wider than my shoulders. I like that you have multiple paint options. Obviously, the two-seat night version existed only on paper, but they really went out of their way to follow the plans and details. I like that they did the engines, because engines are cool. All those turbine blades, those are neat. You never really see them. When I was in the military, they had turbojet engines, like the real thing, set off to the side and with a big cutaway, like you might see in a museum, to teach the engine shop guys, you hey, this is what this part does, this is how this works. We had those displayed. That's something you could do with this. You're buying options, right? And this kit's really affordable. The last I checked online, in US dollars, it worked out to $105, $110, I think. Don't quote me on that. Things change all the time. That may have just been the price in Japan, but I expected it to be a lot more. So you'll just have to take a look at that. That's what Zoukei Mura is doing for you. They're giving you a very high quality precision kit with options, right? If you want to do a diorama, if you want to do the gear up or down, if you want to do a cutaway, if you want to do it disassembled, if you want to do it assembled but people are doing maintenance on it, it's all there, right? That's hard to get with a lot of other kits. So I guess what I'm trying to say is understand that if you're like, well, I'm not going to see all the detail, that's because somebody else like myself might want to see and show off all the detail. Now I don't have to scratch build it. It's there. And if you're going to cover it all up and you're just going to paint it, guess what? All you have to do is glue the parts together. There's no painting involved until you get to the externals, which you're going to see, and then obviously, the cockpit and things like that. You'll have to paint all the regular stuff. So it's simply a matter of choosing how do you want to spend your time and what do you want to build. I just want to say thank you again to Zoukei Mura for sending this out to me. I think their Super Wing series are amazing, and they're only improving. Actually, I think this is my 5th kit from them, because I have the Mustang, the 109, the Focke-Wulf 190, which we're working on. I dug back out because we moved shop, and so we're going to be getting into that soon. And I have their 148 scale F4 Wild Weasel. I don't remember if that's the C or the D. I did a review on that also. This is a cool kit. The shapes speak to me. I like submarines. I like U.S. submarines. And the Russian ones, the Alpha class. Those natural curved lines are just super appealing. Those exist in this kit. Seam lines are put in places that don't disrupt these complicated details, and it's way cooler than I thought it was. Obviously, I'm very excited. I didn't anticipate it being as neat as the final contents ended up being. That's genuinely how I feel about it. So yeah, these are great. They told me to wait until the 20th, so that's why we're doing this now. I don't know if it's available yet. I'm assuming very shortly you should be able to purchase it from them. I'll put a link to the website down below, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below. Zoukei Mura watches these videos. They read your comments, so be polite if you have something that you want to say, or a kit that you'd like to see, or something that you'd like to see different, go ahead and put it in there. I'm sure they'll take it in consideration. It is worth pointing out that the people who make these kits are model builders versus other companies that just happen to be injection molding companies and they want stuff to make. These folks like models, and they like building models. And so, just like I do with the Midwest Model Shop, I take the model builder into consideration first, right? And then we worry about how to make that happen later versus companies that just say, you want a P51? Here, this looks like a P51. There you go. I made it for you. Right? These people, they're professional level builders. So anyway, that's it. That's another winner. I'm not letting it go. We'll build it down the road. Thanks, folks, for watching. We'll see you in the next one.